Hello, explorers, and welcome to Reach the World's Explorer program. For more than 25 years, Reach the World has sparked student curiosity, bringing real-world adventure, fresh perspectives, and career pathways into K-12 classrooms, all through virtual exchange. My name is Tim, and this is the final live stream event of Reach the World's virtual exchange program titled Deep Sea Detectives, the Search for MH370. Over the past few weeks, we've met many members of the Ocean Infinity team that investigate deep sea mysteries of all sorts all around the world. And today we're returning to where we began by connecting with the President of Data Services, Carsten Haagensen, to bring it all together and answer some final student questions. As it is our last live stream event for this program, I'd like to give a special shout out to all our all-star classrooms who have been following along. I know some of you are on spring break this week or doing spring testing. There's a lot going on right now. If you're joining us live today or you're watching this as a recording, we want you to know that we see you. Miss Schaefer students in Virginia, Miss Mays students in Texas, Miss Ponsart students in Ohio, Miss Kolish's students in New Jersey, Mr. Dodd's students in New York, Miss Wu students in New Jersey, Miss Clifton Waite students in New Hampshire, and Miss Palmer students in Maine, of course, who I believe will be joining us backstage shortly. So we'll see you soon. As always, remember that we have amazing articles already published on the Journey homepage for this program, including a wonderful closing message from today's speaker, Mr. Carsten. The link to the Journey homepage is in the chat. Make sure you check out his article if you haven't already. And if you're watching this as a recording, read the article and then watch the recording when you get back from spring break. All of that said, it's time to welcome and give a very warm Reach the World welcome back to Mr. Carsten Haagensen. Carsten, let's get you on camera. Hello.
Hi, Tim.
Hi, it's great to see you again.
Yeah, it is good to be back. I hope it's been a good journey so far.
It has been a great journey. I feel like we have traveled all over the world, meeting your colleagues on a couple different continents. I think who can forget talking to Chad last week from a boat in harbor in American Samoa. That was pretty exciting. And then we got to meet Nathan and Marion a couple weeks prior to that. So we've heard a lot from your colleagues about all the ways that they contribute to deep sea exploration. Way back when we first started, you told us that Ocean Infinity and deep sea investigations were like a symphony, that all of these people contribute their skills and talents and enthusiasm in different ways. And at least from my perspective, that has proven to be really true.
I'm glad to hear, Tim. No, I think I'm glad that you had an opportunity to check in with a lot of the parts of the symphony orchestra, because as I also put in my latest journal, I think for me, obviously this live stream and what I was trying to do is sort of reflect a little bit back on the journey that you have been exploring, and also, of course, what comes next. Because as we talked about last time, exploring the ocean isn't really about one person, one job, one skill, or one piece of technology. It's actually about a lot of people working together. And as I said in my last one, I feel my role is more as a conductor of this orchestra and making sure that the music plays to the symphony, to the tunes, because all of these things have to converge, have to be performed, have to work together in order to actually have the impact. So whether you're an engineer, an operator, a data specialist, or the crews on the vessel, each of them are contributing to something very, very essential. And as you've probably also heard them say many times, things actually don't go to plan. A lot of the technology we put out there creates a lot of issues and challenges and really needs teamwork, creativity, and persistence and different capabilities to make us perform, adapt to whatever situation might be. And as I also said, I think maybe in the beginning, at least I've told you, Tim, that what really excites me about this program and talking to the students who've been willing to be part of a deep sea detectives program is that we're, of course, hoping for people to be inspired by the ocean, inspired by the opportunities, inspired by the fact that regardless of what your capability or what your interest is, there is a role for you to play in the orchestra. There is a role for you to be an explorer. And as I said also, when some of the questions that came from my first live stream, the ocean still holds so many more questions than they hold answers, and they are just so very different. So there's so many things we don't know yet, whether that's around climate, sustainability, and how we interact with the ocean and responsibly doing so. There's a lot the ocean will still have to do for us as people and planet.
All right, excellent. Well, let's take just a little walk back through memory lane on some of the places we've stopped and the people we've met on this journey together. We started off by, of course, talking to you, and then we met Nathan and Marion, who are both sort of, have come to this profession, working in subsea research and searching through different avenues, and had different interests, but have both ended up in this world, this exciting world of marine robotics, and using the latest technology to solve some of these mysteries that lie beneath the waves. They also let us know a little bit about what it was like to live and work at sea. It sounds like a lot of members of your team and your group at various points find themselves living on a ship, which is kind of an interesting career path. Not everybody can say that their office is a ship, but if you're going to be searching underwater, it seems like the right platform to do that from. They were really interesting, wonderful people who had a lot of passion for their chosen career path. And I wonder if you can tell us, what other jobs, if you like the idea of living and working on a ship, or living and working, around complex, ever-evolving marine technology, what other roles could somebody play on an Ocean Infinity team and use those skills?
So I think there's a lot of different skills required for the operation, and it's really very, very broad, right? Because if you think of the work that they're doing offshore, that's really sort of the sharp end of it. But there's so much more that goes into that, whether it's in the design of the technology, envisaging, or even just coming up with the idea of what could you do to solve this mystery, to the logistical part of it, to actually making sure that things are where they need to be, positioning the vessel, so the actual voyaging and transporting of all of the equipment needed, to the actual acquisition, which are the people offshore launching the technology to capture the data, process the data, send it ashore, having people looking at the data, analyzing the findings, coming back with sort of proposals for next actions. Do we need to do more? Do we need to do different? Is this the right tool? Do we need a different tool? Coming back and doing all of that, all the way to the end of how do we report out what we found? So being part of all of that. There are many ways you could go if your interest is in being on the oceans and being on board the vessel. Some are more scientific and research. Some are very sort of commercially project oriented. So how do you interact with the oceans? How do you build offshore wind farms? How do you do oil and gas production? How do you do a lot of different things in the ocean? And of course, for us and the people that you've met has been all about trying to understand the seabed, trying to understand what's down there, and looking for something. But there's a lot of different ways that can get you to that. And as I said, that was never where I started my journey myself. I didn't start thinking I needed to be on a vessel, but now I've been on many different vessels doing different things. And now my latest is this week I was in the Netherlands looking at one of our new technologies that will be able to interact with the seabed floor and actually tell you the construction of your seabed, so that you can use that for whatever structure you might want to consider in the ocean.
Amazing. Ms. Palmer, I see you all backstage. We'll bring you on for questions in a little bit. Just wanted to let you know we see you. And our most recent stop with a member of a colleague of yours, Carsten, was joining Chad Bonin at sea and talking a little bit about the successful search for the ARA San Juan a number of years ago, and really talking about the human impact of some of these searches, especially searches that involved a loss of life. And I thought that was a really interesting conversation because, Chad spoke very, very clearly and well about, some of the things that you discover on the seabed are difficult, but the answers are important for the ongoing, the survivors of the family members. Have you ever been involved in a project like that, and how did you feel about it?
No, it's a very good point, and I'm glad that you had that conversation with Chad, because it's of course, as difficult as that may be, it's also where you can really connect the meaning behind all of the efforts, so all of the technology, all of the problem solving, all of the efforts of these people, and moving offshore and working to try to find something, that the answer, almost irrespective of what it is, in my experience, is the meaning. It is the answering of questions that actually helps people, for whatever it is, move on and move further. And of course, in the tragic stories of losses of life, that is also meaning. It also answers some of the questions for those left behind, and it also gives you an opportunity to further explore why, what, how, things that you don't know until, of course, you find the initial proof. So it's I think for the people working here, people who've been on those projects, it gives you a different sense of what you're doing. It gives you a completely different sense of meaning in the work, because you are sort of filling a role and providing something for those who are looking that they couldn't otherwise get. So I think a lot of us pride ourselves with that, as much as it is difficult, because sometimes, of course, you're not able to answer the right questions.
Yeah, I completely get that. Before we go to Ms. Palmer's class and answer some student questions, I want to bring it back around to the search for the missing Malaysian airliner 370. That's sort of the reason we all came together in the first place, because it's something that's in the news. This great big mystery, the answer to which lies at the bottom of the ocean, and gives us a chance to talk about all of these ways that people like you and your colleagues use technology and creative problem solving and persistence to try to get answers to questions like that. And I know that the ongoing search is not resolved, that there's a lot of moving pieces to that. But in a general sense, let's say the survey is wrapped up, and there are some points of interest, things that you would want to go back and investigate. In a normal, what would happen next, just hypothetically, if there was something on the data that you saw that looked like it might be part of an airplane?
Mm-hmm. No, it's a good question, Tim. And hypothetically, it of course depends a little bit on what it is you have found, because there are different tools and different applications depending on what it is you're trying to examine. So let's say that you have found indications of a structure that you can't really place, so you don't know if it's rock or if it's debris of something else, or what type of fabric it might be, and the shape might look odd, as you've seen from some of the pictures. If you find, or if hypothetically you're uncertain about the data quality of your first acquisition, you might just actually go back and you run the same type of equipment to get a second reading, to verify what you found. That's of course the easy bit, or a relatively easy bit. Where it becomes more difficult is when you change the sort of vehicle or the robot that sort of examines the data. It could be that you're convinced that the data quality is actually good, so doing a rework or a reshoot of that will give you more answers. You will need to do something else. So you would either do a different type of survey activity. You might go from acoustics to visual. You might try to actually, if you are even further in sort of your evidencing or detection, you might even want to deploy a remote operated submarine. So basically trying to get to the item and be able to interact with the item, to try to of course visual, but also physically be able to examine it. So it depends a little bit on what it is you have found and what the data suggests that is the next action, Tim. But there's a lot of different things you can do. But ultimately, it typically ends up being us coming back with a remote operated submarine, so to speak, that can actually interact, because that's the best way to get full proof.
Okay. And sort of conversely, if hypothetically the data showed nothing of interest, what's the feeling of the team? Is it, when I'm sure you've encountered projects in the past where you just didn't find anything that seemed like worth going back to investigate? What are the next steps?
So for any project we do, regardless of what sort of the data tells us, all of that data will be fed into our AI models. So basically, we have a lot of data, sort of analytic model running in the background, where we will incorporate the findings that will help us actually become better at anticipating, or I wouldn't say guessing, but determining where we think the whatever item we're looking for then might be placed. So we actually use also the data we acquire that doesn't show the findings to make ourselves smarter, to train the models, but also to say, okay, so now this was the search pattern. This is what we found or didn't find. Mm-hmm. This then means that probabilistically, this is now what we should be looking for. This is now the next region. This is now the next mission to go for. Obviously, people are always, it's a very exciting period of time when you are constantly looking at data, trying to validate whether you found something. But as I also said, I think in my first live stream, we typically always find something. It might not necessarily be what it is that we're looking for, but we find a lot of mysteries in the ocean. So yes, of course, you're disappointed when you don't find whatever you are looking for. But it's not like people haven't had excitement or can't see the value of then informing our models, so that we can question ourselves: why did we search here? Why didn't we find? What is some of the evidence that we need to? What are some of the clues, I should say, in this context of being a deep sea detective? What are some of the clues that led us to look here and didn't find what we're looking for? Some of these clues might not necessarily be accurate. So if we update them or change them, where might we then go?
It makes me wonder, is it like, how possible is it that no one will ever find out what happened to missing Malaysian airliner 370? Or is that not the way you and your colleagues think in 2026, that everything is findable and you just keep trying? Is it possible that nothing will ever be found?
It's a good question. I guess the way I see the world, Tim, and I guess the way that a lot of I guess my colleagues would see the world, is nothing is impossible. Absolutely anything that is missing can be found, also in the ocean. The question, of course, is how difficult, and what are the clues that you need to connect to do that, and what are the efforts required to making it possible. Technology develops all the time, and the ocean has many mysteries. And as I said, it's the longer things stay subsurfaced or submerged, the more difficult things become. They shift, they change shape. What you're looking for is difficult. So I don't think anything is impossible, also not in the ocean. The question is, of course, what technology do you need? Is it available today? And what are the efforts, if not, in finding that? But that's what sort of triggers us, right? This is what a lot of the people that I hope you've met will find an exciting challenge, right? Trying to solve this. What is it that is wrong? Is it we're in the wrong place? Is it we're using the wrong technology? Are there it has the shape of the item we're looking for, has that changed so much? What if it looked very differently? What if it did something on the way down and it hit one of the undersea rocks, and therefore it's changed? So we need to find a different shape, what we're looking for. All of those questions are the ones that are coming to mind, and the team will continue to think about as we progress and do other things.
Having met your colleagues and having met you previously in this virtual exchange, I sort of knew that was going to be your answer. It sounds like you're a never say never kind of person, which is this seems to be the spirit of this whole industry of people looking for answers on the seabed, that there's just possibility, and where persistence continues, where people keep applying their ingenuity, you just never say never.
Nope.
All right.
Yeah.
We have Ms. Palmer's class waiting very patiently. I'm going to bring them on camera so we can say hello. And hi, Ms. Palmer.
Hello.
Hi, how are you all doing today?
I think we're doing pretty well. We have a few questions for you.
Fabulous. Great. I was hoping you would.
Is the MH370 covered in mud?
It's a good question. Over time, for sure. At this point in time, difficult to say, and it's also difficult to say how much would be covered in mud, but certainly some of it would be, yes.
Okay, who else has got a question? All right,
What's the guys stop?
It's pretty exciting to see yourself on the big screen, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
What's the most exciting thing you have found under the water?
Oof. That's another good question. The most exciting thing, I think a lot of us think back on the Endurance, so Shackleton's vessel. That is actually in your background, Tim. That's the one in your background. I remember from last. And the reason why that excites us so much was because it was done in the Arctic, so it was a very, very difficult place to reach. The test on the robotics at that temperature, you can just imagine batteries on your phones. If you go out in the wintertime, they die very fast compared to in the summertime, or not overheating, of course. But so deploying robots at that depth, at that cold water, was the challenge for us. But also because of the specific environment of the ocean and the temperature, the state and the pristine condition the vessel was still in made it really remarkable. You could see it immediately on the videos, and you could see you can almost like explore it as if it was from that time. So that made it very special, I think. But the San Juan, which I wasn't part of, was also a highlight. So there's been quite a few interesting finds.
Good question.
I want to get to somebody else before I get to you. Who else wants to ask a question? Someone who hasn't asked one yet. Okay, Dex, we're with you.
Where are you guys currently looking for the MH370?
Yeah, so the MH370 was searched for in the Indian Ocean, and as you know, we actually have our vessels go dark, it's called, which means that you turn off all the sensors on the vessels so we can conduct the searches in private. We have a lot of people who are interested and who are following us. So sometimes we have people waiting in the yard, or when we approach the dock or come to harbor, simply just to do footage of our assets or vessels coming in to speculate where we are. So we're not very specific. We typically come up with a large area, and then we do and conduct our work in silence, so to speak, so we don't get disturbed. But it's in the Indian Ocean.
And to follow up on that, I was wondering, did you guys have new information that made Ocean Infinity go out to look again? Because I know you've been out there before. Did you have new information that you thought was like really good and would definitely lead you there?
It's a great question. It actually relates to what you were asking about before, Tim. So because we are, you could say, more or less professional deep sea detectives, what we've ended up building is massive AI model that actually can incorporate all information. So we have a model for the MH370 that contains all news articles, all past surveys, everyone who's been looking for it, all the details in that model. And then we look at the different types of clues. And then when we interrogate the clues, it comes up with, this is where we think things are. And that informs all the time. So in our latest campaign, that was based on new evidence and also changing some of the clues that we might have misread, misunderstood, or haven't anticipated the right way. So that's the reason why we went back. It's a great question. And potentially also why we continue coming back. And we do that for all missions when we come back. It's because the evidence changed.
Carlin.
What do you do when your ROVs break?
That's also a very good question. So depending on what type of robot it is, we do different things. If you are based with one of our deep sea robots, it can be very difficult because sometimes they actually don't come to surface. So then we have to find our own robots in the ocean, and obviously we have a better idea of where they are. But then you need to literally bring something down to depth and bring them up again. And sometimes, of course, we're able to recover them from the vessel because they will be robots, but connected to the vessel with what we call umbilical, which is basically a big line. So then we can pull them up, but they do unfortunately fail. So we need to have a system for how we find them and how we retrieve them. But if I'm being totally honest with you, we've also lost robots in the ocean that we couldn't recover for whatever the reason. It's not so easy as you've probably heard my colleagues talk about. Some of the challenges we find. You miscalculate, so you think your battery is going to last longer than it is, and suddenly the robot is 6 kilometers underwater and no battery, and then you can't really just dive in and find it as easy as that.
We learned from one of your colleagues that when a robot does an emergency ascent to the surface, it sends an email to you.
Yes.
It's on the surface, come get me.
Yeah, I'm here.
Which I thought was very funny.
Yeah.
Hayden? Ready?
Yeah. What did each of you study in college?
It's another good question. I myself studied economics, so I'm actually not even an engineer. I'm just an impersonator, so to speak, that I was just interested in that. But I think if you look at the people that you've met, they actually come from many ways of life and have studied very many different things. So we have people here who've been studying biology, people who've been studying math, people who've been, of course, there are engineers, but there's also people who've studied history and literature. So it's really different ways of life that sort of comes together here. And it's because we need different perspectives to make this all work. I think the one thing that we talked about last time, Tim, is more the interest of the ocean and trying to answer these sort of mysteries and trying to understand it better is probably what drives all of us to be interested in this, living offshore on vessels or trying to come up with robots. But it's actually a very, very broad range of backgrounds we have in our company.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just add on to that great student question by saying, if you remember meeting Marion on Ocean Infinity team, she started in on this, like just really passionately being involved in her high school robotics team, mm-hmm. and learned a lot of, early sort of basic how ROVs and AUVs work that way, and has taken her passion on to becoming a career. So people who we've met over the course of this virtual exchange have come to Ocean Infinity and this work from very different directions, which is very cool. It makes sense that a team that solves complex problems needs people who have all different backgrounds and all different perspectives and ways of thinking about things.
Doesn't you guys losing the ROVs just contribute to like ocean pollution?
Yes, it's a good question. And obviously, if we lose our robots to the ocean, there will be you could call a spill and a potential contamination. I think we, of course, have to. So what we try to do is, of course, to make sure that all our robots are as sustainable as possible, so that they actually pollute as little as possible. And obviously, when I say we lose robots, it's not something we do every day. Luckily, we are able to retrieve, or they send us emails so we can come and get them. So it's not something that happens very frequently. So I think instead, what we are focusing on and what we always talk about internally is how do we make the interactions with the oceans more sustainable, so that we, for the planet, do a difference. So this means for us, for instance, remote operating the robots. So we don't have people flying and visiting the vessels. We have smaller vessels, so we don't use as much fuel. A lot of the work that the robots do are actually to instead of a more conventional, a much more intrusive interaction with the ocean. But you are, of course, right that in the event that we lose a robot, that is pollution, and that's, of course, also why we try everything we can to bring them back.
Okay. We have time for one more?
Of course, yes, please.
What are you guys planning on looking for next?
That is a good question. What are we planning to look after next? So we are constantly looking for different things. A lot of it, unfortunately, I'm not allowed to say, and I'm not trying to be boring because for whatever the reason, it's a sensitive piece of information. So the most exciting thing that I think I can share we have been looking for is Amelia Earhart's airplane. And it's actually not us that are driving that investigation. It's somebody else who wants to have us look at what they have found and what they have, the evidence that they've put together. So we're just supporting them. That excites me quite a lot. If we could find that, even if it's not us leading all the clue, putting them together, that would be cool.
Talk about a mystery that
Yes.
could really be exciting if it was solved.
Yes, no, exactly. So I would be happy with that as well, but not an easy one either.
No, very, very complicated. And for our students in Ms. Palmer's class and elsewhere, go look for some news articles about like what efforts have been made in the past to find Amelia Earhart's airplane, because there's a long story of how we've gotten to this place where, you know, the clues and the persistence and all the things Carsten and his colleagues have been talking about have really sort of narrowed the search range to a point where we may finally have an answer to a question like that, which is very, very exciting.
Can I ask you just one more?
Absolutely.
Yeah, please.
We are wondering what country you're from and how many languages you speak.
Oh, I'm from Denmark, so I'm Danish of background. Probably speak 4 languages.
Wow.
What are your 4 languages?
So it's of course Danish, then it's English, and then it's German, and then Italian is my least favorite, but it's that would be okay. I think that Denmark is a very small country, so in the Scandinavian countries, you actually also speak Norwegian and Swedish if you're sort of from that area. So it's a little bit, but I would say, yeah.
Very cool. Ms. Palmer, before you go, can you give us a little update on your ROV project? How's that going?
Yeah.
Do you have a student who wants to explain it?
No. Kaden? Okay, yes, I do have a student who wants to explain.
Great.
So we've just finished building, and on Friday we're going to a pool to test out our ROVs, and
they're almost done. Like
they're almost done.
All the way together, right?
Wow. How big are
they? Engines,
yeah.
Right?
How big are they?
And we just haven't been able to test them yet. Yeah.
Very cool.
And what are you hoping your ROV will do? Are you trying to get it to a certain depth, or do you have like a goal for your ROV?
The goal is there's going to be like little arms to pick up buoys and like rings and stuff, and have to go through like a little obstacle course in the pool.
Yep.
Wow, that's very cool. That's advanced robotics right there. And what are you filming that by any chance?
I'm sure we will.
Yeah, well, keep us
to
posted.
share it.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'd love to see. I'm sure. I know you all have been working on that a long time. So good luck. Have fun testing your ROV. And I hope that when it is immensely successful, you think about continuing on in marine robotics and someday maybe working with Carsten and his colleagues to discover other things in the ocean.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Palmer and students. It's always nice to have you on. Great student questions. You know, I have one more question for you, Carsten, before we wrap things up. And it's back to the question of the Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. We've talked time and time again about every every search, every success and failure is a learning opportunity. And there's so much constant learning. It's like a theme that just keeps coming from you and your colleagues, that you're never finished. There's always something you can learn from either a success or a failure. And I wonder, just in the general context of the unique challenges of the search for MH370, if you find the ship, what will you have learned from going through all this, or the airplane? What will you have learned from going through that effort? If you don't find it, what are some of the things you will have learned from going through all that effort?
It's a very good question, Tim. And I actually, as you said, I think that the core of our DNA is there isn't really a big difference between what we learn from what we find and what we don't find. Mm-hmm. Because what matters for us is the approach of which we take before we go on such a sort of the investigation, really, because there's so much pre-planning that goes into this. As I said before, just looking at the evidence, trying to build the model that will tell us where we should be looking, challenging ourselves to think about this, figuring out what type of part of the ocean, what are some of the challenges unique to the environment that we're going to be looking at, what type of technology should we be deploying, what data are we looking for, what data will give us the answers we're looking for, analyzing the data, interpreting the data, reinforming ourselves around the hypothesis and the evidence that we have. And in all of that, there are so many different things that we test out all the time. So new robots, operating our current robots differently, new types of sensors giving us new data, processing the data differently, operating more robots at the same time, different type of robots trying to supplement each other so we can maybe get more data or more precise data. So there's a lot of things that we will have learned, irrespective of whether we end up having found the MH370 or not. And all of those learnings are already being put to place or being sort of put to use in other projects that we have ongoing. So all of the operators and engineers and people involved in this rotate through different projects. And you already talked to Chad, who is now working on a different project, but using some of the learnings that was from this specific mission also.
All right. Every time you answer a question, I have one more question. So sorry to keep asking one more question. But we know that, there's so much of the ocean that's left to be explored. I don't know the exact percentage, but it's a high percentage of the ocean floor. We have no idea what's there. All the tools, all the techniques, all the things that you're doing are going to be what leads us to fully understanding what the ocean floor looks like, what's there. What's your best estimate for how long it will take us to scan and understand what the whole ocean floor looks like? Can you even guess?
I probably would defer not taking a guess on that, Tim. I think, it will depend on our interest level in doing that and how many people will get engaged and how we can develop new technologies. I think the ocean is just so vast. So what does it even mean to understand the seabed floor? To what level of detail do you want to know, and is it relevant? I think it will be, unfortunately, a long time. I'm not sure it will be in my time either. I'm sure we will have some idea of it, and maybe new technology will come to life. But it's a long time away, I think, unfortunately. As exciting as it is.
It does seem like it's possible, and that we're moving towards it, which is exciting. It's exciting for young people who are interested in the topic, because there will not be an absence of work to be done by the time they take those passions through to careers. So,
because I think that what you are pointing to, or what we've talked about, is even for every answer you find, you have more questions. So as we talked about also in the first one, for me, it's not about just understanding the seabed floor. It's understanding what is the potential of interacting with the sea and the seabed in a different way. So I mentioned some of the other applications which I'm quite excited about, which is seabed farming. So imagine having agriculture in the ocean, being able to feed and use that to feed people and the planet and so on in a very sustainable way. There's so many things about the oceans that we haven't explored. So even if you understood the seabed fully, it would just be your starting point from, what do we do with that? What can we do? What does this then mean? and that is exciting, I think. And that's why, as I said, this isn't, for some reason, we've only just started exploring the oceans. We've been in space for a long time also, but really we have so much here on planet Earth that we still need to understand and can really do a lot more with.
Well, true to the name of our program, I feel like as detectives, we've answered a lot of questions, but have raised a lot more questions that we won't be able to cover in this program at least, but certainly has been a pleasure meeting you, Carsten, and talking to you and going on this journey together with you and your colleagues. I want to give a special thanks also to Nathan and Marion and Chad and some of the behind the scenes members of the Ocean Infinity team who've helped us produce this program for young people. It's been very, very exciting to learn about your work in the context of the search for MH370. This is sadly the end of the road for our program, but keep an eye on the news, everyone, wherever you get your news, as the search for answers to the mystery of Malaysian Airline Flight 370 continues. We now know so much more about how that search is unfolding. And when the answers are discovered, you all will know what a triumph of people, technology, and persistence it was, and how important it was that humans took that search through to its conclusion and found those answers. So I think personally, it's only a matter of when, not if. And I'll be watching the news and cheering you, Carsten, and your colleagues on as the search continues. But for now, as much as I could talk to you forever, we have to say goodbye. Thank you so much, Carsten. To our students, keep exploring. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much, Carsten.
Thank you.